Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Velo podcast. My name is Mike Levy, and today I've got tech editors Alvin Holbrook and Josh Ross with me because we have a whole new bunch of stuff to cover, including a new Shimano GRX Di2 drivetrain, sort of, but we're going to get to that. We're also going to get to BMC's new Team Machine SLR, which claims to be an all-around climbing machine, as well as the new Orbea Terra Race. Now, Shoddy has a first ride review of this on the homepage. Orbea says this thing is an aggressive gravel bike. I'm going to take some issues with that, but we're going to get to that later in the podcast. First off, Alvin and Josh, busy times. How you guys doing today?
Man, the tour puts some pressure on things. Everybody wants to get stuff out before the tour.
Exactly. Alvin, you are looking cooked. I am just going to be straight with you.
Yeah, I am. And it's the machine doesn't stop turning, but
it doesn't.
One thing I do enjoy is talking about bikes. So
yeah.
I do enjoy doing that. So including handlebars for whatever reason, even though I won't be affected by it, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So last episode, we got into the UCI's new rules. They've got a bunch of new rules with safety in mind. And one of them, Josh, is handlebar width rule that the internet really didn't like. Can you explain to me why some people took issue with UCI's handlebar width rule and what we've learned since last week?
Yeah, so I'm going to be perhaps inflammatory in the way that I say this, but
yes.
That's what the article was, and I stand behind it. This is discriminatory. It is discriminatory towards smaller riders, and that disproportionately affects women. And what it is that they have said outside to outside, the max or the minimum is 40 centimeters, which if you then, most bars are actually measured center to center. So that equates to a 38. And that part, already there's an issue there for smaller riders because I'm 5'9", and that's what I ride. And then they have also specified that between the innermost portion of the hoods or the controls, however you want to name that, the minimum distance is 32 centimeters. And that means even on a 38 bar, if you're using Shimano controls, which have a little bit more of a hook on the top of the hoods and angle in a little bit, you have to be quite careful with how you angle them. And really, the issue here is that it, as I said, it disproportionately affects smaller riders, specifically women, and it also just, like, they're really locking in, like, this is what it is. And the clarification that came out was like, hey, you guys maybe thought that we weren't super clear or that we were going to make a change. No, we just want to make it clear. Here's how you measure so that you know that smaller riders can't have smaller handlebars.
Oh, so wait. So there wasn't actually a real clarification. It was just like some better diagrams so we understood the measuring, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it was clarification, but they didn't make a change. They just made sure that everyone understood what they were saying.
Yeah. I think isn't the easy answer here to have the measurements or the rules like be proportional? Like if you're 5 foot, then you get to use a whatever. But if you're 6'2", then you get to use a whatever. So, the men can only go down to a certain width, but the women could go narrower.
Yeah. I mean, that gets kind of tricky too, though, because you got riders who are just limbs, right? Like Jonas, Vingo is like, he is all arms, like he's all arms and all legs, and so that makes things weird. And he's got kind of,
it's probably hard
for
too. Race people to figure that out on the time too. I kind of think that there's some sort of way that makes sense, like logical sense along that line of thinking. However, probably the simplest thing to do would just be to have a more reasonable minimum number. And
of course.
38 is not that number. And I don't know really why And just so we're clear, I said last week that it didn't affect me, and it turns out I was actually wrong. This clarification helped. I had been measuring a bunch of times to go what do they mean? And they came out with this clarification. I measured my 37 centimeter Envy bars, which are the bars that Tade uses, and they don't. You can't use them.
What'd they measure with internally, like the inside?
31.
31. So the inside minimum is 33, correct? If I remember correctly.
Is it 33 or 32?
32. 32.
Yeah, it's 32. Right, so, yeah, and they measure 31 on 37, and they do, those bars do have some flare, I think, but it doesn't really matter. They wouldn't work anyway because of the 40 to 40 outside, but just to give people a sense, because there is still a little bit of confusion depending on where you look. And a 37 just does not work. And it's not like I crazy turn in my handlebars. So they're like a gentle inward turn.
Dang,
that's nothing crazy.
That's really tough for when you line up next to Tade at the tour next week. Man.
I mean, I am curious. I didn't have time to reach out to Envy and ask them about what they're doing, but I guess they have time to figure it out also.
They're just going to have to stick riders on wider bars.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to. But
you can get a wider SES aero bar.
Yeah, it's just that Envy spent, the story of that bar, and this is just one thing, but the story of that bar is supposedly, is whatever it is. But
is this the $1,200 one-piece bar?
Yeah. So the story of that bar is Tade said, I want a bar like this, and then they developed a bar that they didn't think was going to be commercially viable for him, and it's now impossible to get because it's sold out. Yeah.
It's the UCI, I guess the rule is kind of discriminatory, but I'm not defending the UCI here, anybody that's listening, but in my mind they're just being kind of dumb. Maybe they didn't really think it out all the way. They're not actively being discriminatory. They're just they didn't think enough.
But just because you don't think about something doesn't mean that it's discriminatory.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I know, 100%. But the reason that I say that is that it is real easy always to shit on the UCI. Of course. Yeah.
No,
we should.
That's inherent bias. That's what that is called. They didn't think about, if we give them the benefit of the doubt and say they didn't think about being discriminatory, but they were, that's called bias. And I actually had a discussion with this ongoing, I think, in the comments section of the Velo Instagram post about this.
Yeah.
And this was exactly the argument that some guy was making, that they were not being discriminatory because they didn't intend to discriminate against women and small riders.
They're being accidentally
when you say that out,
discriminatory.
When you say that out loud, does that actually seem like it makes sense?
No, you're right. Yes, I know. We're definitely going to see this rule modified, I imagine, at some point. So
you think? I'm still saying that I doubt it because we talked about this last time. I don't see the UCI does not. I have not. I don't remember them being oh, you know what, we made a mistake. That's not what they do.
Yeah. I mean, forgive me for not knowing, but what would be the repercussions if a rider, if Tadej Pogacar shows up at the start line of I don't know, the Criterium du Dauphiné next year with the same bars?
They tar and feather him.
Yeah, okay, that is actually a
if it's a slap on the wrist,
question.
If it's a slap on the wrist, UAE is just gonna be we ball, and they're gonna let them keep running the narrower bars.
It's definitely not going to be a slap on the wrist. It's going to be the same kind of things as illegal positions and all that stuff. It's not allowed, and maybe they're just so big they don't give a shit. It's not like freaking UCI is listening to this podcast or reading any of these articles, because I don't think they give a shit what anybody really cares. I think they're the governing body, and they're thinking of things that maybe we don't think about. And I don't know, maybe they should start. Maybe they need to hire a normal person.
A normie.
Yeah.
They need to hire some gravel normies from the middle of America.
I reached out to Adam Hansen.
Shout out. Okay.
I reached out to Adam Hansen, who is the president of the Riders Union, and he is known for he's fairly tall, and he's known in his career for running 38 bars, which it would be narrow for him. It's like he's an older rider, so that was quite progressive then. I'm really curious to know, if there's more, if he has any insight about how this rule came to be, or in his position as the Riders Union president, if there is more to say on it, or they're going to try to work with the UCI to make a change or anything. I haven't heard back from him yet.
When you do, we want to talk to that guy on the podcast. Adam Hansen, if you're listening, we would love to have you on the podcast and just ask questions, because I'd like to learn about this stuff. And I think everybody else listening too, because there's obviously some behind the scenes things going on that we're not aware of. So yeah.
Yeah. Last week when we talked about this, I think both Josh and myself argued that this does affect non-pro cyclists to a degree.
Yeah, I didn't believe you, but you were right, 100%.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say, like, I'm kind of changing my tone on that. I'm not entirely sure how much this like wholly affects us, because I think narrow bars or rather right-sized bars have taken a hold of us, and they definitely affect us. But I think like people are going to keep going for a shorter, like a narrower bar if they can. You know, like
I think that people who like to cosplay bike racing, which is a lot of us, including me, we all love to do that, cosplay bike racers. I think when we go and buy a bike or a handlebar, I think it's going to affect us. But I think for the people who like to go on group rides with their friends on their road bikes, and they bought a $5,000 something or other or whatever, like a normal all-road bike, I don't think it's a factor, to be honest. But I do think that for a lot of people it is.
Or like that $1,500 Canyon. Did we talk about that? Do you have that on the list? I just got to say, I really like that bike. I saw it in person. Anyways.
I have to address what you just said, because here's the thing about that, is that this is not the direction I was about to just go. I was wondering if this is going to be like disc brakes and it's actually going to come back to the UCI from consumer. But that aside, let me just address what you just said. Here is the thing. Many people who are buying those types of bikes, they don't understand why they're not comfortable on those bikes. They don't understand that they should have the bars that fit them, and the bars that come on it don't fit them. And there are bikes that, I looked at bikes recently that from the 47 to 61 all have the same bar size spec. And so if you're riding, let's say a 50, which is fairly reasonable for many women, and you have the same bar size as someone who's riding a 56, which is quite average for men, you might not understand why your shoulders hurt. And you think like, well, I'm riding longer, and so that's just the nature of things. But it's up to the bike industry and us to an extent to help people understand that there could be better. And this is going to make that harder.
Josh, did you just say that bikes ranging in size from 47 to 60 something use the same handlebar width?
Not all of them, but yes, I just looked at a bike recently that had that.
That is unacceptable. Like in mountain bike world, we could just cut our handlebars. It's not a big deal. Who cares? I think that's like, that to me is like, I don't know, what is that like? That's like bikes coming with, every bike comes with like 190 millimeter cranks or something. Like, just suck it up.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to tell you about that. It's also that in this instance, it was an expensive one-piece bar and stem, so not easy to switch.
I learned something new every day on my podcast with you guys. This is good.
I would say, I suspect what's really happening is that those bikes, they sell in a specific range. Right? They're expecting that they're selling from like, I don't know, 50, maybe 50 to 56 is the bikes that they're really selling. So, and then they're just like, well, whatever. If you're a 47, you're going to have to deal with this. You're going to have to, it's a retailer problem. But
what company, Josh? What company?
That's BMC.
Oh, shit. Well, speaking of BMC, actually, let's talk about Shimano GRX Di2 first, because I think that's our our main headline for this discussion because it's
I think so.
pretty big news for the gravel world. Alvin, mountain bikers got wireless Shimano drivetrain recently, and now the gravel boys have it too. So tell me what it is. What do we get?
Yeah, so basically Shimano GRX, if you're familiar with it, it came out in 2019, if I remember correctly. Or 2019 was Di2 at least. It's kind of like this mishmash of Shimano Road and Shimano Mountain, and this one is like it's even more obviously a mishmash. Like Shimano will tell you that this GRX derailleur is its own derailleur, but it's effectively the Dior XT derailleur. Like,
which isn't a bad thing. That's a good,
not a bad
thing, everybody.
That's a good thing for repairability, relative cost. Like, it's an expensive derailleur. But yeah, and you have that, and then you have a mountain bike cassette. You have a 10 to 51. You don't have any other choices that are officially supported by Shimano. You have the existing GRX Di2 derailleurs or shift levers, which have only been slightly changed since they were like introduced in 2019. You have the GRX cranks, which have been unchanged since GRX was released. And then everything else is compatible with everything else Shimano 12-speed, which I think is a positive.
So this to me seems like a pretty clever release on Shimano's part. Basically what they've done is it's a rebranded XT derailleur. It's an XT derailleur that says GRX on it. With the existing levers, with a mountain bike cassette, existing cranks for their first 1x gravel group is the whole idea here. Before it was only 2x. So that's the big thing. It's a 1x gravel group specific for Shimano.
1x12 wireless, because you can get it mechanical.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, and I really like
the mechanical came out a while ago.
Yeah, and I should note that it came out last year, and I should note that the derailleurs are different between Mountain and GRX there. The cable pull is different.
Oh, okay.
So that one is more specific to GRX than this one is. That's it. It's a mullet, basically.
Yeah. This actually,
mullet,
it makes so much sense.
Speaking of mullet, though, doesn't this sound like SRAM and it's missing a gear?
No, because SRAM's equivalent is 12-speed as well.
Yeah, when we're talking gear range, they do have the 13, but it's stuck in, is it 1046 is what the 13 speed is locked into right now, which rules it out for me personally where I live. I need a much bigger range. You can run a smaller cassette if you wanted, but then you would need to run a different derailleur. Is that correct, Alvin?
So here's the thing, is that GRX is only coming in one cage length. It's coming in the long cage. However, if you go to the mountain bike side, if you get an XT or XTR SLX, you can get in 2 cage lengths, because there is like an enduro-centric version where you can run a 9 to 45 cassette. Now, what's interesting is if you go to the the mechanical side of things with 12-speed GRX, you can get a 10 to 51 cassette with a long range or long cage derailleur, or you can get the medium cage derailleur to fit a 10 to 45 cassette, which is what I did with mechanical.
Okay.
So that's why I have a 10 to 45 cassette. Shimano says that they're not going to introduce a native 10 to 45 cassette option for GRX Di2, which, whatever they have the data, I don't. You can fit a 10 to 45 cassette here, and I don't think the shifting is any worse. If that
interesting.
Was your jam.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the big talking points here, obviously, you have SRAM 1x12. It uses a UDH hanger with the funky transmission derailleur. The big thing here with this, besides the fact that it's 1x, is that this is a new Shimano 1x system that uses a normal derailleur hanger as opposed to UDH. So I think it's a bit more flexible. Like you could put it on more bikes possibly.
Way more far more compatibility. Basically, you could, if you really wanted to, you could stick it on your 80s mountain bike or what have you. Like theoretically it works. Like as long as you have disc brake or a hydraulic brake option, like it works.
Which I think that's sort of I mean, SRAM has just, like, a big part of their launch was, hey, all these new bikes have UDH for full mount. And so that implicitly means, get a new bike. So I guess this is a perfect answer from Shimano.
Shimano's answer is, hey, you could actually take your mechanical drivetrain, and if you wanted to go electronic, you stick a rear derailleur on it, you stick some levers on it, and you're good. Which is cool to see.
Having talked to some friends that are thinking about moving to different drivetrains and stuff, I think that, like, from our point of view, maybe setting up a SRAM transmission drivetrain, it's pretty straightforward. Like, and if you need to watch a video on how to do it, you watch a video on how you do it, and, like, you get it going in 10, 20 minutes, whatever, you know? But I think for some consumers, for probably a lot of consumers who know how to install and set up a normal derailleur system on a normal derailleur hanger, I think that's appealing, that you can go wireless from Shimano, and it is basically, you set it up and install it the same as you do their wired drivetrains.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously this current setup of GRX Di2 is prohibitively expensive for most people who want to do that. Right?
Price aside.
Like, price aside, which hopefully Shimano is able to rectify that soon enough, considering there's an SLX derailleur, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I really like that. I think I personally prefer the gear ranges of this 10 to 51 cassette over the 10 to 52 that SRAM has in their 12-speed offering, just because the jumps are slightly smaller in the low gears. There's no, like, 10-tooth jump from the 42 to 52. It goes 45, 51, I believe, which I personally like. And then the shifts are super quick.
Shift? Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. Tell me about the shift action. How does it feel? Is it similar to Di2? People have used Di2. Is it the same?
You know, so Shimano has been known to be, like, super buttery for the longest time. And this, I'm not sure if I would consider this super, like, to have that similar like silkiness or buttery smoothness that, like, 2x road sometimes has, where you almost, like, can't recognize that you shifted.
It's so smooth.
It's so smooth. It's so smooth, so quiet.
Yeah, whereas SRAM, their electronic drivetrain is much more, not talking shift quality, we're talking, like, the positivity feel of it. It's much more gunk in the gear, where the Shimano stuff is like, you know.
So I will say that there is some variation to that, because if you're looking at the Explore stuff, I think it's a little bit faster, but transmission is super deliberate. It is a ka-thunk, and there's no, like, it's a very positive feeling. Josh, I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, so SRAM actually addressed that. I just want to put this out there that that is specifically designed into that, to the mountain bike side SRAM stuff. They want it to be a little slower. Patents? No, actually, that would be a better answer. It's so that it's, like, it's more robust. Like, they wanted to slow down the shifting on that, and that's one of the things about Explore is they said, hey, we know that you all noticed that the mountain bike derailleur was a little bit slower, and so Explore speeds that up. We think we found that balance. I'm not defending them one way or the other. I'm just saying that that's their design intention.
Yeah. I mean, Levy, you have transmission on your bike, right? Yep. Do you think the shift speed, do you ever get hung up by that?
No, never. But see, I will say that, like, when I ride a bike with Di2, it like, the shift quality is just as good and it is quicker, but it's not like I don't ever feel like there's no, like, power loss. I don't ever have to, like, ease up. Like, I'm not easing up when I shift my transmission. I'm pedaling like an absolute gorilla and just shifting.
Yeah.
That is perfect.
I mean, that's the point. I wasn't clear about it, but that is the point. That they want you to be able to pedal like a gorilla and still shift. So they want it so they slow it down a little bit so that it's more robust in that way. And you can notice it if you go back and, like, there's a lot of times when I review things where I'm like, am I imagining that? Because it's so subtle, but it is there. You do notice it.
Yeah. And Alvin, you're saying that this GRX Di2 is kind of in between that, action-wise?
I would say so. So it's way faster, which I shockingly kind of get mad at my, like, SRAM transmission bikes occasionally because it doesn't downshift fast enough, like, because I didn't plan well enough. This one, super duper click. quick. The downside of that is that there's some times where it'll get into the right gear, but it doesn't have that like finesse that you'd expect of Shimano, just because it's just sweeping across the cassette super quick. And this is in the normal setting, mind you, because you can do 5 different like shift speeds with this.
Could you tell me about that? Why would you want 5 different shift speeds? Would you want it just fastest as it could go all the time, like turbo mode?
I think it degrades the shift quality a little bit. Like going back to the SRAM thing where they purposefully slowed it down.
So on the road side, I have to experiment with this more, but one of my complaints about Shimano Di2 on the road side is that without the clutch, it'll come off the outside of the crank sometimes. And I was specifically told that you should slow it down. Not from Shimano, but they said, I bet you have it on the fastest setting. And I was like, yeah, why would you not?
Right?
And a buddy was like, yeah, I solved that problem by slowing down the shifting.
Interesting.
Yeah, slowing down the shifting does help, and it gives it that kind of SRAM, like, not necessarily the like clunk, but like it doesn't feel like it's messing up anything ever. Whereas occasionally I'm like, ooh, that couldn't have been good for the chain, but it just does it.
Yeah. Okay. What are the shifter ergos like? Is it a standard Shimano hood? Have they changed anything, or is it the same?
It's basically the same as what they've been doing since they introduced Di2. So it's fundamentally a different design, basically, than Shimano's road levers, where the piston is mounted like basically parallel to the ground or parallel to the bike, as opposed to more like at like an offset 45-degree angle. It looks an awful lot like what SRAM is doing, or should I say, like SRAM's new levers, like internally, look an awful lot like GRX, basically. So the pivot point is really high compared to Shimano's other drop bar levers. Like the feel is lighter too, as a result of that, partially. But then the hoods are a lot longer than Shimano's other hoods as well.
What about reach?
Yeah. So the spike that I built up, which is a Ventum GS1, and we could talk about that too if we need to, but I had to take that into consideration because it's, in my measurements, it's about 5 mil longer than
just like
current
SRAM
12 speed. Yeah, just like SRAM. Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, this came first, to be clear, and it's not a bad thing, and none of this is a bad thing. I think SRAM, I think the ergonomics are slightly better. Like it's easier to access the bonus buttons on SRAM's Force and Rival, Force and Red, whereas this like auxiliary button on GRX Di2 requires just a little bit more effort to find it.
Yeah.
So does it avoid finger pinch when you're wrapping fingers? So 2-finger brake, you have 2 fingers behind the levers. Does it avoid finger pinching on descents?
I mean, I definitely haven't had that issue. And I tend to bring in my levers in quite a bit because baby hands over here. But yeah, I haven't had that issue. But I frankly don't often have that issue myself. So I'll have to go back and make sure.
I will tell you, it definitely, like on TRP roadside, I'm sometimes like, ooh, I gotta move. Like I can't emergency brake here without unwrapping my fingers. And SRAM, the reason I'm asking is because their levers, they're like, we designed this so you will not pinch your fingers and you can brake from the hoods.
Yeah.
Shimano did it first, so I was curious to know if they managed the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the GRX levers are probably my preferred Shimano lever at this point. Like drop bar, as far as drop bar is concerned, I really like it.
Alvin, are you using the left-hand dummy lever, which I think is a new addition? That
is a new addition. So it's basically a gutted electronically. It's a lever that's been electronically gutted. I'm not. It's cool because it's a little bit lighter and it's 200 grams or $200 less expensive. But I really wish they would have put some sort of like dropper accessibility into that or something like that. That would have been pretty sweet.
It doesn't have an extra button for you to use a dropper on the left, on the dummy?
No.
Oh, no. Dang. That makes tons of sense.
No, it doesn't have any electronics in it.
Oh, shit.
Or anything mechanical either. Which, to be fair, like if you look at GRX Mechanical, they do have a dropper specific lever for the left side if you wanted to do that.
Okay, that makes sense. Before we talk about the new GRX wheels, do we care that this GRX Di2 isn't 13 speed? Do we care? Does anybody care?
I think so.
What
do you think, Alvin? You did the review, but
I mean, you're saying that you care, Josh?
Yeah, it's a huge difference to go. This is the thing. A lot of people, they are still on 11 speed, and this is when you talk to people and they go, "Oh, I don't like 1x11." You go, "Yeah, that's because on 1x11 you're constantly shifting and you always feel like you're in the wrong gear." And then you get to 1x12 and you're like, "Oh, actually, this is all I need." And then you get 1x13 and you're like, "Oh, actually, you know what? So that I can stay seated on super steep, loose gravel climbs, there's now one more gear." And when that's not there, you're like, okay. Now, but I guess it's a little different because the range is there, but still, the other way you would get a tight gearing and the range.
Yeah, that's fair. I've kind of thought about like because I like the range of this. I want this drivetrain with a bigger chainring, which is something Shimano doesn't offer. I want a 46 or maybe even a 48 at this point. With the 10 to 51.
Big man swinging here.
I mean, I've been riding that Cervelo a ton, dude. Jeez. I know. Yeah. But like, I really like that, having that range, but I'm trying to think of like, where would the extra gear on this be beneficial? Because the higher half of this is 2-tooth jumps, which ideally they're 1-tooth jumps, but then you have to like, if you need to go from like high to low, then you have to hit the downshift button like 6 times, and that gets kind of annoying, which that's a frustration that I have with some Explorer. I'm like, is this too many gears? Which I had that issue with Campy Eckhart too. I wondered if it was too many gears.
So when it's mechanical, it's a little more of an issue, but I think when it's electronic, it just dumps the gears as fast as you want to dump the gears. But also, I'm not racing over the peak of stuff usually. So I'm in a gear range, like a few gears, right? And then I'm in a few gears somewhere else, and then I'm in a few gears. But I really only shift like between maybe 4 gears in one section of a ride.
Yeah. Levy, do you think you need another gear with your 10 to 52?
I think that...
And where would you put it, if so?
Oh, I mean, I would put it between the two... I'd put it between the two big cocks.
There you go. The 42 and 52? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting discussion because in the mountain bike world, like I had similar discussions on the PB podcast, and I mean, I don't want to make a sweeping statement here, but I would say that a lot of mountain bikers, probably most mountain bikers, they're not thinking about cadence beyond what is like sort of comfortable-ish, because, you know, mountain bike world, you're thinking about how to get up and over something like weird different things. But having a drop bar background, I mean, even before I started mountain biking, it definitely, I've always thought of the cadence, and a lot of times, man, like, especially like it's hour 6, it's hour 8, it's hour 10, and like I want my legs to go exactly this fast. Not that fast, and not the other gear fast. I want it this fast, and I can't get it. It's not the end of the world, but if I could just push a button and have an extra cog in there, I would, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would have wished that there was a 13 speed option, you know, like, and with a 10 to 51, like theoretically, could Shimano have like fanned the cassette out just a little bit more to make it compatible with existing microspline, and you just stick another cog in there, and so it's still compatible with the 12 speed chain? That would have been crazy.
Should we just engineer their 13 speed group here on the Velo podcast for Japan?
I mean,
like, hey, we got it sorted, everybody. Like they haven't thought about it or tried it. You know, they definitely have 13 speed drivetrains.
Why don't you do this? It's like as we're sitting from our armchairs, like.
Okay, I was looking. I was you know, off on my own thing, looking to try to find the cassette. You might already know this, but I was wondering how many 1-tooth jumps are there, and the bottom of the cassette is 2-tooth jumps.
Yeah,
so
on 12 speed.
Wouldn't you want those? So SRAM has a bunch of one-tooth jumps in there, I think.
But that's with the
Double check
46.
that one. Well, right. So you got a 10 to 46 with 5 one-tooth jumps, I believe. You double check me, but
yeah, but we were saying that we want the range. We want the range
I want
of the
that
50.
Big Daddy cog because I'm
Yeah.
well, right. But you could you could go less one-tooth cogs on the bottom and then keep that range. You need 13 speed, otherwise you're going to have a big jump somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, if they could spread like fan out. I mean, but that's the thing, because there's an 8-tooth jump on the 10 to 46, going from 38 to 46. And that is a big jump. That's bigger than what Shimano has here.
It's true, but you don't notice it because if you're going to 46, you're crawling up a hill. And so, at least for me, I'm like, that's fine. I don't even notice.
Oh, I definitely need lower than that 46, I think.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean that jump. The point when you make that jump in the cassette, you're moving slowly.
Yeah,
like you're going up.
that's fair.
You're going up something steep, so it's not such a big deal. And then you want the one tooth down at the bottom where you're like hammering, and you need your cadence right.
Yeah, that's true. It's fair.
Now I sound like a SRAM fanboy, but
yeah, you've crossed that bridge a long time ago, Josh.
I just think that I feel. Here's the other thing about it, and this is what to be fair, this is what I said about SRAM too, is when at this point in time in 2025, when you release a group set and you go, yeah, it's 1x12 or it's even 2x12, it feels a little like you're leaving something on the table. Like you go, like, really 1x12? Isn't somebody else 1x13? And
yeah,
I have to wonder if consumers feel that way. Like on Pink Bike, when a new drivetrain would get released, a lot of people, I mean, the comments are often the vocal minority as well too, but a lot of people were like, we don't want more gears.
Yeah, we see those comments too.
Yeah, like we don't want more gears. We just want like less expensive, more reliable, longer lasting, et cetera, et cetera. So I think like there are obviously those people that want the extra cog, but I do think that we're in the minority, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fair. But here's the thing, is I think obviously the success of this drivetrain isn't going to be based on like bike nerds going out and like piecing together the drivetrains and pulling parts from different parts of Europe because it's the cheapest place to buy it, even with like import duties and stuff. It's going to come from like OE. So are these bike brands going to spec GRX Di2 one by? And I'm not sure that they are. I think that's the thing. Like,
right, because if you're just looking at bikes, that's actually a really good point. You walk into the store or you look online and you go, well, this one has 13 speeds and this one has 12, and they're the same price.
Yeah, and Force, you can get a native crank or you can get a carbon crank. You get a carbon crank with carbon levers, and
with
that
power
just
meter.
has more curb appeal. What'd you say, Levy?
Yeah,
with the dub power meter as well,
yeah,
too.
Exactly.
That's
which
another
is
big thing.
relatively
Is
inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
Shimano bikes. Shimano doesn't have a good answer for power meters, and often you'll find, especially at the high end, like when I'm reviewing like really high end road and gravel stuff, you're like, oh well, this Shimano one, this $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 bike doesn't come with a power meter. That seems like so cheap, and it's just because SRAM has it and makes it easy, and Shimano really doesn't. And 4i has stepped into that a little bit, but not everywhere.
They do a good job with that. I think the trouble is like, I really like this group set and we'll have a lot more time on it. I'm going to, sorry, Shimano, I'm going to have to change out chain rings and do some more experimentation and get the gearing that I want. But I think that if I were a consumer and paying for this stuff, I'd see like, oh, that has one more gear. Do I need that? Like, is that cool? And it has these other features. I don't know. Like, Shimano's done a good job with GRX Di2. Like, but there needs. I'm not sure if this is good enough.
What about the wheels? Because there's some wheels too, which are, I will say, not the most exciting wheels, but they seem like a reasonable deal and kind of straight ahead and reliable.
Yeah, so $300 US, if I remember correctly, for the wheel set.
Holy shit.
$280.
$300.
Yeah, it's an alloy wheel set. It's the GRX RX 180. They also have the RX 880, which is what they sent us. It's the carbon wheel version, which I've spent a ton of time on. I think those are like $1,700. I'll have to double check. But like the carbon wheel, this one gets a 25 mil internal, gets a hooked bead. It gets Shimano's hubs, which are not the highest tech, but are generally pretty reliable. And you get the option of
still, right?
These ones I'll have to double check. I believe that they're not. I believe that they're largely a sealed bearing now.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I think they just recently went away from cup and cone. I don't mean to break anybody's bubble. I could be wrong,
even on these wheels is the question. That's cool. That's good.
They're doing it on the high end. They're still doing cup and cone on the high end stuff. But when Shimano Qs came out and they had their own wheel set, that moved away from cup and cone for the most part. Yeah, I wanted to write this story about, because I was relacing some Ultegra 6500 hubs from like the 90s to Mavic Open Pros, TBT, like hardcore throwback. I was relacing it because like you can't replace the bearings on them because like the insides of the hub races were so pitted. So it just needed a new hub replacement. And I wanted to write about the demise of the cup and cone.
Yeah,
which is a bummer. I think it's good for most people. Say
about cup and cone for sure. Like I think most people should be on sealed bearings, 100%.
Yes,
but the cup and cone thing is, as a old bike mechanic who spent many years at a shop working on bikes when things were cup and cone, like everything high end was cup and cone. I do miss those days of like getting it, absolutely just bang on right.
There is an alchemy to it. Like, that's something you hang your hat on, that you can perfectly tune a cup and cone hub. And that's something that I am very proud of being able to do, because that took me forever to figure out. Like, I was working in a bicycle collective, like working on these like pitted hubs everywhere. And I was very proud of being able to get them to like roll well, And, anyways, it's good to see. It's good to see that Shimano is doing it. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see that spec'd on GRX bikes.
When is the last time you used cone wrenches? Because I have some cone wrenches just up there, and I don't think they've been off the tool wall in a long, long time.
Oh, you're going to love this, actually. It was earlier this week because I was switching free hubs on a Fulcrum hub.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because those aren't cup and cone, but they require, I think it's a 17 mil and a 14 mil to switch the free hub.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also like did rebuild the cup and, because my cargo bike has cup and cone bearings too.
Oh, okay.
So weird. Yeah. But otherwise, I would not be moving them.
So I just want to, as we're talking, I want to bring it back to this release of Shimano wheels, which is to say that while they may not be the sexiest, one way or the other, I had a friend who doesn't really know about bike stuff, and I had in the past, I told him Ultegra Di2 for your next bike, like you should definitely do that, and he got it, and it's like he can never keep it charged, and he's always complaining, and he's like, he's in my ear, and then and he's like, what wheels should I get? And I said, you know what, go get Shimano wheels, because I never want to hear from you. I want just go get those wheels, because they're gonna be work. You're not gonna have to. There's no weirdness. They're not super expensive. Like this kind of thing, Shimano is really good at. And I guess that goes back to the Di2, GRX thing launch too. Is that it might not be the 13 speed, 15 speed. What I'm joking, but like there might not be a million gears, but it's gonna work, and people are not gonna complain about it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's move on. There's two new bikes. The first one we're going to talk about is an Orbea. It's called the Terra Race gravel bike. If you went to the Velo homepage right now, there's a video from Shoddy Dave of him riding the bike. He talks about his first ride impressions. He wrote a hell of a lot of words from our first ride impressions that you could read them all and find out about it there. We're going to talk about this thing right now. Orbea says that it is, quoting here, an aggressive gravel bike. Alvin, I looked at this thing. It's got tire clearance for 45 mil tires. It has no frame storage. It is a bit lighter. The geometry it's got like a 71 whatever degree head angle and a 420 millimeter rear. And like nothing about this says aggressive anything to me. It's pretty run of the mill. So I don't want to slate Orbea too hard here, but what am I missing?
I think you're missing that you haven't ridden in Europe yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to say that. That's I didn't want to break in, but like the Europeans are like, they're like, I've worked with Europeans and they're like, oh no, we own gravel. We did it. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I don't think so.
Yeah. So this thing, it looks like a great gravel bike. It's obviously light. Orbea says a medium unpainted frame. It's much lighter than the previous version. It's 910 grams. I do want to say they give the weight for an unpainted frame, which they also sell as well. Mm-hmm. So it is a viable weight. But I also want to say that unpainted weight is sort of like when car brands give you the weight of the car without the fluids in it. It's like, I can't drive the fucking car without oil and coolant in it. Yeah. It has to weigh more than that. So
the next bike we'll talk about actually gives you the weight painted, and they make a point to do that too. But it is. And I've definitely ridden bikes that were unpainted carbon, and you definitely flinch. You're just like, every time you hear like a rock strike, which on gravel, like that's gonna happen. Anyways, we got to look at this bike a little bit in the past, and then we looked at it again at Unbound. Like, I think this bike is pretty cool for what it is, as long as you're not riding like in the US where wanting a 50 is like a luxury. You don't need this. I think about like the Traca again. Like, you don't need a 50 for that. And there's so many pros that like were running 2.2s and that type of thing. But also a number of pros that were like, I'm not sure if I actually needed a tire that wide.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think, and Dave says that he thinks you could get a 50 in there, but like for the most part, no problem. Because it's 45 mils with 6 millimeters on each side.
Yeah. ISO MTB. So
that's normal though.
Not always.
6 mil.
A bunch of them are 4 mil. A lot ISO road is 4 mil, which is I mean, we're quibbling over a few mils, but it does make a little.
I mean, it's a huge difference.
So the bike that we saw at Unbound had a 50 up front, and it was pretty tight. You could do it in the dry. And then the 45, which we should have brought calipers for the Schwalbe G1. I think it was a G1 RS. Like, probably, I don't know if I would go much wider than that.
Yeah.
I don't like to push the edges of the specs on gravel stuff, because you're liable to rub through the carbon when things get a little muddy.
Yeah. It's true. I mean,
I have a story about that. That's for another episode, though.
Okay, good. Thank you. Shoddy really liked how this bike rode. It really spoke to him, which I think is why these bikes exist, is that they kind of feel light and whippy, and the handling has evolved to the point where they're not road bikes on gravel. Like the bottom brackets are a little bit lower to give you some more stability. The trail figures are a tiny bit higher to give you a little bit more stability too. And I think that's why these bikes exist. Also for the pros, because the pros want these bikes too.
Yeah, exactly. I got the gist that this is basically a gravel bike that for people that come from a road background. I do want to read a couple sentences from Dave's First Ride article, because I think he summed it up after I've talked shit about this bike. I think Dave summed it up quite nicely here, and I'd rather end on a
he's got
slightly
a habit
more
of doing
open-minded, positive note.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dave says, if you can't tell, I thoroughly enjoyed riding the Orbea Terra Race. In essence, it's an Orca gravel. It has the springiness, responsiveness, and lightweight of the Orca road bike, but it's all tuned for taking on rougher stuff without beating you up. And like the Orca, I appreciate that they focused on the bike's handling, weight, and comfort rather than trying to crowbar in aero gains, which I think is a pretty good way to sum this thing up. There's not a lot of like, add-on little features here that are going to add weight and stuff, but it's like a no-nonsense, go-fast gravel bike.
Yeah, definitely. If I lived in Texas still, this would be very high on the list of like future gravel bike for myself. I really liked it. Not really a thing for me where I live, but it's cool.
have a question about that. So I haven't ridden this, but if you're looking at this bike and you're reading and you're hearing that description, to me, I'm like, well, but why leave that on the table? What about the Aspero 5 that is aero also?
Yeah, that bike rides really firm.
So are we thinking this is just going to be a better ride? Neither of us rode it, so
yeah.
I mean, but is that what we're thinking? Like, okay, we get a better ride quality that you give up the aero.
That's what it sounds like.
I think so. Like you look at that Aspero or Aspero 5, and you look at the seat post, which is shared with the Cervelo Soloist. It's a very aero seat post. It's deep. That seat post is just not inherently going to flex all that much. This one, slimmer, and it's a 27.2 round seat post. It's gonna flex, like, comparatively.
Yeah, it's just more of a forgiving all around kind of do everything gravel bike. And unfortunately, I think having some frame storage and tire clearance is part of that, or should be part of that sort of brief.
Yeah.
Do it all around, and it isn't in this case. But the flip side to that is everybody could put a top two bag or a frame bag on their bike. And a lot of people would prefer a frame. You know, my frame has down tube storage, and my frame weighs 1,300 grams. Where that Orbea frame weighs 900 grams. That's like
almost a pound.
That's a pound. That's almost a pound of weight. So it is easy for me to sit here and say it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, it's not aero, this and that. But at the same time, there's people out there who want to buy a 900 gram carbon gravel race frame. Of course, it's just not me.
Yeah, and I try my best to not play favorites with brands and that type of thing. But Orbea, I really like what they do because they are employee owned, for one. Yeah. And they also have their Mayo program. So for essentially no extra cost, you can change out your bar and stem widths. You can change, like, if there were crank length options, you can do that and they won't charge you. They'll let you add a power meter for a small fee. They'll let you do all these things that I think are really cool and that can't be forgotten when you're considering these bikes.
Yeah, that's huge. That's like that's a purchase decision right there. Not having to deal with changing out your fancy one-piece bar because they wanted to spec the same size throughout the range.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of handlebar widths, right? Yeah, exactly. Jeez. Alvin, we've got another new bike from another very European company, from a very different part of Europe. BMC Team Machine SLR. Give me the brief on this thing briefly. Lighter, stiffer, faster, etc.
Yeah, all of those, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
So BMC has done the Team Machine, I think, since 2006, essentially, and it's been their race bike. It's since been changed up a little bit because they have the Team Machine R, which is for the most part going to be what like Tudor Pro Cycling and their other pros are going to be riding, which is heavier but more aero. So to distinguish the two bikes, essentially, they went lighter on this bike. So the size 54 that I had, like painted with the cages, without pedals, and with a computer mount, was like 6.6 kilos, which is 14 and a half pounds, or something like that.
Wow.
Claimed frame weight is like 710 grams for a 54 painted.
With fluids. Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with fluids. And so that was pretty cool to see that they made a big, and with hardware too, they made a big thing about that and focusing on making their paint as lightweight as possible. So they're basically all tinted clear coats effectively because those are lighter than standard paint. Geometry is effectively the same as before, which is both good and bad. BMC's road geometry is a little bit different than other race bikes. They have a longer trail, which I personally like.
More stability, right?
More stability. Yeah, you go to Switzerland, which is what I had the chance to do, and their descents are just like fast. It's hard not to hit like 35, 40 plus miles an hour without trying. And so yeah, that's like 70, 80 Ks an hour. Like, and so you want a little bit more stability and ideally a bike that's not as twitchy. And so trail figures are a little bit higher here. Yeah, but besides that, like, it's kind of the road machine. If you like the road machine and what it does, this one still does it. It's just lighter.
Yep. They're actually saying 16% lighter 222 grams. I think that's system weight. I think that's frame, fork, seat post.
Yep.
Which that it's a big number. If it was just frame, that would be a huge number. That's like 3 generations worth of weight saved right there. But 222 grams for system weight, frame, fork, seat post, which is not a small amount.
No,
in
no,
road
it's
world
not.
Especially. So
yeah, and then
and just as stiff.
They said the aero is like the last thing that they focused on, which is what all of these bike brands are saying when they release an ultralight bike. But they are saying it's more aerodynamically efficient than the outgoing Team Machine SLR, which is cool. I got all of 2 rides on it, which was still like about 100 miles in 2 days in Switzerland, like with some fast folks, and yeah, it's a great bike. It's a great bike, but you kind of expect that from this bike. I think the worry is like, how does it distinguish itself from kind of the lighter bikes, like the Addict, for example, which is just like so obviously lighter, and everyone that I talk to that gets a chance to ride it like loves how that bike rides. And
I have one coming back to me this week, I think, with Super Record for testing.
Dude, I'm so jealous. I
can't wait to ride that bike again. It's such a good
entry level road bike, just a Addict fucking Super Record. Hey everybody, we're all about entry level stuff. Hey Josh, speaking of entry level pricing, are you going to be wearing those ridiculous $700 Specialized shoes on that Scott Addict with Super Record?
I want to. I really, really want to. Just so everyone knows, these are $700 shoes. Hilariously, Go.
No, I was just going to say, I was pretty pissed when they released $600 shoes and they decided they're going to release off-white versions of those shoes, which is basically what this is. It's an off-white.
No, that's not what this is. This is basically the light. It's a climber's bike. It's the Scott Addict of shoes. It is. They made it as light as possible. They say it's the lightest shoe in the peloton, and certainly the lightest. I don't have any reason to challenge them on that.
It's what Porsche does with their GT3 cars, where they take out all the sound deadening and everything, and they make the car objectively worse, and they charge you more for it, right? Are these shoes objectively worse than the?
It's possible.
Yeah. Because you have the Aries. Do you prefer the Aries to these?
I prefer the Aries. So I have, as I wrote in the it's almost like a first ride, but not quite, because I just wasn't quite ready to do an actual review on these. And I reached out to Specialized and I said, hey, these aren't really working for me, and what is the solution? And so that conversation is a little bit ongoing. But the whole thing is that the upper has basically no structure. It is like so nothing. It is paper thin, and it's the TPU or whatever, and it feels like, I don't know, a slipper. It's even less than in some ways it feels less than a sock. Like it is just so light up top, and the closure system is good. But I feel like I maybe need more structure in the upper, and I prefer the Aries. But I'm wondering if a different insole can fix this for me, so I have some adjustments to do.
Is it the same carbon sole, same base, but just with like an ultra lightweight upper? Is that the main difference?
So they have gone through every little detail, and they talk quite a bit about the base. So they looked at the base, and then they said, okay, we can't get any lighter, because a big part of the Torch and other Specialized shoes too is you'll see that there's a crease around the edge of the outsole, the carbon, and Specialized says that crease, that's the only way to get all the extra the stuff that makes carbon hard, the
resin.
Resin?
Yeah, the resin. Thank you. Word finding issues. Anyway, that's the only way to get all the resin out, is to have that little crease so you can really squeeze it. And so the point being that the regular Torch is about as light as they can make it anyway, in terms of that base. And then for this, they were like, okay, how much can we just take away before you start to notice it, before it becomes a problem? And so they have just cut out pieces on the side. So in the back of the shoe, it's like this narrow bridge through the center. And then at the front, they've substituted plastic for carbon, TPU. So like under your toes is like nylon or plastic, and it's just lighter than even carbon.
Why?
Nylon. Wait, did you just say nylon? Like my $100 shoes that I ride?
Yeah, so there is an element of that, right?
Oh my gosh. It's just like this horseshoe, dude. Like, oh my gosh. Okay.
It's the front, it's like under your toes. Yeah, there's a section of plastic.
Oh yeah, the $160 like specialized recon shoes that I have that flex more at the toes. Do that too.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Now, I will say, in my riding, I do not notice any flex. Of all the like any complaint about this, I would not for a moment complain about the base. It is as stiff as anything. It doesn't feel like any of those cheap shoes. It's the upper that I'm a little like, can I fix it?
Why aren't these shoes working for you though, Josh? Why, if you put the Aries on your left foot and this shoe on the right foot, what is the difference?
They move around. They're not, your foot is not. So the whole thing with the Aries is that they call it a sprinter shoe, but it just locks your foot to the base. You do not move. Your foot does not move. And I like that because when I'm doing 100 or 200 miles or whatever, like every little bit of movement, it's like, okay, it's fine for an hour. It's maybe fine for 3 hours. It's not so fine for 10 hours or 15 or whatever. Like it just grates on you. And so the Aries just locks your foot down. And this one, there's a lot more movement because there's not enough structure to lock your foot down in that same way. And so my toes sort of were uncomfortable against the front.
What about, you have pretty good experience with the SRAM Torch shoe. And that's what most people have probably been riding if they want a top end shoe. How does this compare?
Yeah. So at least right now, the Torch is more locked down too. I mean, I would prefer the Torch. The Torch is not my favorite shoe of the Specialized shoes though. I do prefer the Aries over the Torch. Yeah. For the same, like, it moves around a little bit.
Yeah. If it was your money, which shoe would you get out of these?
Well, this is a difficult thing to say because I don't want to negative. Actually, I'm glad you asked it. Here's what I'm going to say about this thing is that I don't want to tell brands they shouldn't make Halo shoes because, I can't afford a $700 shoe. So does that mean it shouldn't be available? No, it should be available. I'm happy that they counted grams and like made the lightest shoe. Would I be able to afford it? Absolutely not. But let's pretend for a moment that I was in some other alternate world where I could afford expensive shoes, like $600 shoes. Would I choose the $700 shoe versus the $600 shoe? Because there's a number of $600 shoes from different brands. Right now I would stick with the Aries. I'm hoping that I do like the feeling of a super light shoe, so I'm hoping that I can dial this in for me. We'll see.
When you say super light, how much lighter is it than an Aries or a Torch?
So the Aries 2, I measured in my size at 283 grams. And then, so that's size 44. Specialized gives another number. They give 148.2 in size 41, which is apparently what size Remco wears. I guess he's small, which shouldn't be surprising. However, my shoe in size 44 is 175 grams. So
for a pair?
No, per shoe.
No. Per shoe.
So,
okay, I was going to say. Okay.
Per shoe. So, but that's like 270. Yeah, that's like 100 grams lighter. Yeah. You can notice
that's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Rotating weight too. Like that's rotating weight.
Yeah.
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 Obviously.
That's like you're moving around and you can notice it. It is nice riding with it. I feel like if I can so the reason that I keep talking about the insole thing is because when I went to Specialized Innovation Center at one point, and this is where they build the shoes. I met with the team, and I was like, I don't really like the Torch, and like I'm having trouble. And they were like, yeah, you have a low volume, low arch, like you need arch support and volume in your insole, and they set me up on their blue insoles, and it was pretty much life-changing. And well, let's let's settle that bit. But it was a big thing. Suddenly, a lot of shoes worked that didn't work for me. And I had some, when the Aries 2 came out, I had some discussion with one of our freelancers about that, where I was like, I had to change to the blue insole, and then it worked. So I put the blue insole in this, it didn't really work. And so I'm like, okay, should I go to green? It can make a big difference. And there's an argument that you shouldn't have to do that in $700 shoes, but we're all unique. There's only so much they can do.
Yep, it's only going to fit in a certain way. And I will say, I think $700 is absolutely crazy. But when I wear my like kind of wintry gravel shoes, and then the next day I wear my super light sporty shoes, there's a huge difference. So like there's a world where this 100% matters to a lot of people. There are people who are going to buy these things, even though it's absolutely crazy.
They look sick.
Also,
they look sick.
That is, we should mention that they do look sick. They like the little orange pop. They talk about that orange in the marketing material. They're like, well, because the Innovation Center, they have this whole thing where they just build stuff. They have like the 3D printers and like fabric and, you know, sewing machines, and they just try things and they build things. And they were like, well, we had this orange fabric on hand. And then I guess when they went to the factory for the first samples, like that's what the factory had. And so they just used that orange fabric, and then they decided to keep it in the end. Now the marketing speech is, it meant, it meant butterflies and hard work and I don't know, whatever, but it looks sick.
Yeah. So you could buy a pair of these, or you could buy for 2 pairs of these, you can buy the bike that I'm reviewing next week. So,
which is what bike, Alvin?
I don't know if I can say it quite yet because it's still under embargo. But I really like this bike. I'll say that.
Talk about perspective, eh?
And it's a gravel bike.
Well, there's a lot of people that buy excellent bikes, either used or like city bike style bikes for less than this.
Yes, 100%.
And I like to. I keep having these discussions because I'm working on different buyer's guides. The shoe buyer's guide came out on the Velo site, and then I'm helping with the outside buyer's guide with shoes. And I was like, hey, we really need to put like a high-end racy shoe on the outside one. And we discussed. I don't know what will end up in the end, but we discussed the Shimano S-Fire 903, I think it is.
Great shoe.
That's like a very classic, great shoe, right? I'm just like, that's an easy thing to put on as the high end like racy shoe. And there was this discussion about, well, it's $450 and that's kind of a lot. And I'm like, let me tell you about these $700 shoes.
You need some perspective. Oh boy, guys, Josh, always a champion of the people on these episodes here with your Scott addict with super record and $700 shoes. I just want to thank you for coming on and,
just
champion.
really bringing it to the,
to the people.
Yeah, to the people.
Guys, we have some very busy times coming up. Obviously, we've got the Tour de France coming up. Velo is going to have daily Tour de France podcasts where we recap the stages that I'm hosting, which is going to be insane.
Levy.
I'm praying for me too. So everybody, make sure to come and listen to those during the tour. We're also going to record our pre-tour podcast show here. It'll be me and Jim Cotton and Andrew Hoodie. So stay tuned for that later this week as well. Guys, we've also got Eurobike coming up.
Good Lord.
That's where Will is right now. So we're going to see a ton of coverage from Eurobike. Alvin, what are you working on this week? Some behind the scenes here.
Oh man, a lot of Tour de France stuff where we have some stories, try and give everyone some background on what tech we might see at the tour. We'll be doing that as well. Got a lot of embargoed stuff to still work on as well.
Secrets.
So can't say more.
Secrets.
But that inexpensive gravel bike, I'm amped on it.
Yeah.
Really amped.
I think one thing we need to do in the future is probably do some podcast episodes that focus on value and performance and that sort of thing. So maybe we'll kind of lean into that with this whatever bike it is that you can't tell us. So
Yeah.
we will get into that.
Yeah.
Josh, what are you doing this week?
A little bit different than that. I am testing some high-end wheels and a high-end bike, and I do
cool.
also want to mention
they are cool. What you are testing, they're cool.
Yeah,
and people
both
are
of
gonna
those
know about
things
them.
are sick. Yeah. I cannot wait to talk about the bike that I'm testing.
Head aerodynamicist, everybody. Just keep that in mind.
And there's some sparkly paint on it. I'll leave it at that. But I'm jazzed on that bike. And the wheels are sick too. I'm gonna ride them this afternoon. I also want to mention that the FEMS is coming up in our discussion of what's coming. Let's not forget them. You know,
they'll be in our pre-race show too, as well. We're going to talk a whole bunch about that as well. So
love it.
And they don't currently. They can still choose the handlebars that actually fit them. So
yes. Okay, everybody. Thank you for being here for another episode of the Velo podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and share and comment and do all those things, and stay tuned for a whole bunch of tour coverage and tech coverage and embargoes lifting, new bikes, new gear, all on the Velo website and Velo YouTube channel. We'll see you there. Bye.